Okay, we have finally made it to round 18.
Recording in progress.
Morning, everybody. Round 18 of the Vodacom United Rugby Championship. The Vodacom Bulls side that will take on Dragons is as follows. Jan Hendrik Wessels at 1, Aka van der Merwe at 2, Morne Smith starts at 3, Kobus Visser and JF van Jordan retained at lock. Namakaba comes in at 6, Ruan Nokia captains from 7, Cameron Hanekom at 8. Zach Beggar and Keegan Johannes combine at halfback. Sergio Peterson comes in at 11, which sees Kanan Moody moving to 13 to pair up with David Creel. Sebastian de Klerk and Willy Leroux complete that starting 15. So Jan Hendrik Wessels, Aka van der Merwe, Morne Smith, Kobus Visser, JF, Namakala, Ruan Nokia, Cameron Hanekom, Zach Beggar, Keegan Johannes, Sergio, David, Kanan, Sebastian and Willy. From an impact squad point of view, Johan Grobler at 16, Simpiwe Matanzima at 17, Francois Klopper at 18, Janus Kirsten at 19, Marcel Kutsi at 20, Bernard van der Linde comes in at 21, Stedman Hans and Devon Williams at 22 and 23. Everybody comfortable? MV?
Yeah, this like last bench again, please.
Okay, cool. So, bench, Simpiwe, Johan Grobler, Simpiwe, Francois, Janus, Marcel, Bernard, Stedman and Devon. Cool. Ronaldo's not here? Let's start with you.
Like, I guess obviously the big question is a tough week after the news of Cornell. Will the Bulls be playing for Cornell tomorrow?
Yeah, look, I'm sure it'll be emotional. I mean, it's always like that in sport, you know. I mean, so much so that we didn't train yesterday, you know. I mean, and it was interesting because you look at that and you think, you know, you look at it. I'm giving an example. I didn't realize how close Willie was to Cornell, and then when I looked at the highlights, and then I asked him this morning, I said, geez, I didn't realize that they played Test rugby together. They played for Free State. They played for Boland. They played for the Bulls. I think Willie was here when he was here, you know. So it just shows you a guy like that. You don't think it even affects a guy like Willie, and I'm talking about because he's a new guy in the Bulls setup, but even him, you know. So we couldn't train yesterday. I mean, it was very tough. But you know, again. It is one of those things where I'm sure the emotions will be big tomorrow, whether you talk about it, don't talk about it, you know, whether whether you put a picture up, whatever it is. I just think it will be a tough thing for players anyway because of the fact that he obviously was so well liked.
Is that emotion?
Yeah.
Must you just make sure that it's a good thing or not?
Yeah, but you know, again, I suppose I think one is a very wonderful stay. I think. Was it Winston Churchill said, out of adversity you can get opportunity, you know. So who knows? Maybe it was something that, I'm not saying we need it because you never need a thing like it, but sometimes adversity like that can take you another level, you know. And we've been close and many times, maybe that adversity or that feeling of what it's like, you know, because I mean, let's be fair, we forget, Kobus, I always say to the youngsters, you know, we think because they're professional players and they earn a lot of money and they're seen on TV and they do TV adverts that they supposedly, you know, completely, you know, whole when it comes to those sort of things. They're only still young, you know. So, you know, as I said, I'm not going to make a big thing about it for tomorrow. I might use it as something that we need to be motivated because it might be something that will help us going forward. But like it has other sporting teams. But yeah, I mean. It made me realize yesterday when they didn't want to train, and I don't say it like that, when they didn't feel like they were up for it, that it's a lot, you know, you take a lot of things for granted, and I'm sure as they do every day as well, you know, being a player, you know, being, you know, I want to say spoiled the way we are spoiled, you know, maybe they take it for granted, and maybe a reality check like that, you know, makes them re-look at where they are as rugby players, which, you know, is part of my job as well, is to get them to realize that where they are and what they're doing is not really the real world. You know, it's very nice while it lasts, but it's not really how the real world operates. So it isn't, I mean, as I said, it isn't something that we, you know, as I said, that we don't, with something that we don't want. But sometimes, as I said, sometimes that wake up or that reality check is something that teams need.
Jack, what are some of the areas you want to iron out before the playoffs?
Yeah. Well, I think the combinations are important. That's why I picked a team like I did. And I think, again, just I said to them, just understanding what we want to do everywhere on the field as clear as we can, because when we get to these knockout games, like they're going to be from next game in, we're going to have to be really accurate and clear about what we want to do where on the field. So I would think that would be just a better understanding about where we want to be as a group, and then get the combinations, cohesions as close as I can. Whether it's units or small blocks like front rows, and I'm using impact off the bench. Back three combinations, whatever it is, just to make sure that we can feel comfortable that we have ticked all those boxes going into playoff games.
And what is the status on Johan Goosen?
Actually, very good news. He had a procedure. We had it with Don Duplessis and Wim. I mean, they're very great knee surgeons, as you know, and it went well. And there's no time frame, but they're confident that if everything goes well, we can have him back before the end of the season, which is great news, considering that when that happened, everyone thought that might be career ending. So, I don't want to say to you he'll be available next week or the following week, but it isn't as bad as we initially thought when he was obviously carried off.
Ruan seems to be shaping up quite well at 7. Seems to be a bit of a revelation there. What's the plan? Keeping there, or is...
a little bit of both. I think don't underestimate what Jeff's done in the short space of time, as well as a 5 lock. So, combination of Jeff and Kobus has worked well. I always said to you, beginning of the year, I think a guy like Ruan can play 7, and especially in a country like this where we have so many locks. If you look at the locks, got Ergia and Eben and Luet and all those locks. If one World Cups, Franco Mostert. I think the nice thing about having Ruan, who can play more than one position, is gonna help him. And he's got all the makings of being a good loose forward as well, because he's got incredible work rate. He offers you another option in the line-out. I mean, it's funny. And I see him now. He's running on the touchline, doing one-on-ones with wingers. I said to him, "Geez, won't be long before he's doing trip kicks." And that again sums up exactly what I think about him, is that he would go now and do the extra yards. If he's going to be a loose forward that stays on the wing, then he would want to improve those skills that he needs on the edge of the field as well. So, again, no surprise that the last couple of weeks since I've moved him to 7, that's what he's been spending his time on. And I'm sure, I moved Peter Steff to flank when he was a youngster. And look what happened. He's not only once, twice Player of the Year in the world. So it is something that I think that Ruan will adapt, and especially in the pack we've got. There's enough players in the pack to do the things that he could do in the middle of the field while we release him to stand on the edge.
And then, in terms of your fly-off situation going forward, is Keegan going to be? Is he being groomed to be the full-time man?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, because when we get Andre and we have Goosen, then we got 2 Flyhalves, then injury free, then those 2 guys will be Flyhalves. And that doesn't mean we want to then chuck Keegan out, because the fact that he can play 9 and 10 is a massive bonus. So I suppose the only way I could answer that is this time. Not this time next year, but this time, or when we get to the next competition, and I can be able to tell you who's where. A guy like Andre, if I think now, people say you've got him next year, he'll only join us in November, if I'm lucky, because they've got the rugby championships. So it means someone's got to carry on running 10, and someone's got to be training there. And then the end of your tour, they go on the end of your tour, and then I'll probably get him from January. So, and then that's 26, 27, I might not have a lot of time with him either, because it's a World Cup year. So there's a lot of other moving parts that we've got to worry about between now and the end of Andre's contract. I know I'm jumping ahead, but if he's got a 2-year deal, there's a lot of things that are going to happen in 2 years that I'm going to have to be able to juggle. Keegan has done an incredible job for guys, but he was always a 10. That's the ironic thing. He was always a 10. It's like people are thinking I've moved him to... He was a 10 that then moved to 9. So, he's just gone back to where he actually started playing anyway. It's like as Willie. Willie started 10 at Boerland as well, and at Paul Roos. So, it's not something that we've just, pulled out of a hat.
Just lastly, losing Johan Goosen being an ex-Springbok, and then you can do much more, I suppose, intricate things, call it that, with somebody like Johan Goosen than a relatively new flyer like Keegan. I mean, no, he's not doing exceptionally well, but is that as
No, it is different. Yeah, it is different. I mean, let's be fair. The skill set that Johan Goosen has and the experience he has is very different to a guy like Keegan who's still learning the ropes. But the one thing that Keegan has got is he's got great pass because he can play 9, and he's quick. He's really quick. I mean, just before half time, that kick that went down the field, when he ran away from all the players, if it wasn't the fact that it rolled into touch, he probably would have scored there. So he's got a lot of positive things in his game anyway. I think, as I said, I think like any player, just needs to spend some more time and play in and around those players, and then I'm sure he'll get better.
Jake, just apart from obviously all the emotion that's going around tomorrow's game, you guys, your players also said it this week that you guys have given better performances away from home as well than you guys have done at practice.
Yeah.
That's obviously part of what tomorrow you want from the players.
Yeah, and for the next couple of weeks, Brendan. So, it's not just tomorrow. I mean, we fully admit that we've played really well away from home, and we haven't played that well, and I'm not talking about poorly, we just haven't played that well for 80 minutes at home, and so it'll be good. I mean, if we can get a win tomorrow, then we're almost guaranteed of getting 2 home games if we keep winning. Again, I repeat to everybody, everyone says you're going to get a home semi-final, and a lot of people out there think that therefore you don't play the quarters. I don't know why. People said, so you play home semi-final. And I said, no, it's not like the other clubs, other countries where where the top 2 teams don't play quarters, and because there's obviously some championships where the 2 top teams don't play in the first weekend. So they're under the impression you win, that means you automatically go to the semi-finals and you play at home. But saying that, I mean, obviously for the viewers, we don't get to guaranteed straight into semis. We still got to keep winning, and that's why what you say is right. Is tomorrow's a home game. The quarterfinals is definitely a home game. If we win tomorrow, then we keep winning, then the semi-final is also a home game. And if we can turn that home, I wouldn't say record, but that home performance as we have in the away performances, then we'll be very positive.
Last week it was Simpiwe. This week Morne Smith. The report's out again.
Morne's got a contract, and we won't release him. So all that jargon about So it's very simple, and all to the thing as well, Brendan. We're not going to release players that are. Otherwise it's a free for all. It just means every week if you release a player, then it's a free for all. Next week another club will come and say, if we pay X amount, will you let him go? And our board, our CEO, our president are on the same page. We're not in the business of developing players to sell them, because otherwise that's a very different market and business to what we are in. We're in rugby. So as a coach, if we're going to get to a point where we produce youngsters, find them at school, bring them into our system, and then sell them and make money on them, sign them up and sign them, that's a very, very different product to what we have now. So I'm very thankful, and I'm saying it to you on the record. My board, my CEO, my president are not in favour of releasing players for money. Because we're busy building a team and a provincial side that we want to be able to be stronger and stronger.
Obviously, this time of the season as well, you're going to stick as close as possible to your core group anyway. I was just wondering, in terms of the Currie Cup, because when things like Johan Goosen happen, obviously a bunch of people ask us what happened to the other guy, Buta, or what happened to this guy, etc.
Yes.
Is it the same as last season that you've had to give a bunch of those guys 8 weeks off the Currie Cup?
And it hasn't started yet. Some has and some hasn't. What I meant is, I want to make sure that we understand. Yes, there's still balls to juggle. In other words, there's leave, there's rotation, there's the promises you make to players to give them game time in certain combinations, there's injuries, there's Springbok camps where guys have to go to Springbok camps because it influences how much they can train. And there's I think it's important for you guys also to understand is that there's also the ball that you have to juggle is you don't want to make too many changes because you need to make sure you keep cohesion. And so when you put all those factors together, it's hell of important that you understand that selecting the team's not as easy as what people think it is, or as straightforward. And one of the things that I would like you guys to help me with is, I'm not going to give you all the injured players, guys. I mean, I can sit here and tell you a whole list of players that are injured. So Gerard Steenkamp, Ulrich Lowe, Kurtley Orange on a sabbatical, Kutum Chunu on a sabbatical. I don't do that every week for a reason. I think with all the analysis there is in rugby now, that once I give you a weekly update on how many injuries we have, it almost helps the opposition to know who I'm going to put on the field. So it's not a, and when you put those guys in, that changes every week. Last week you get Goosen out. I mean, so now I've got to rejig that thing. So to answer your question, Brent, it's one of those juggling acts. There's Springbok camps, there's rest periods, there's players that you've promised would get time, there's players that you need to give time, there's players coming back from injury that can't start, that need to be on a bench, there's players that that are finishing their contracts, and they will be playing Currie Cup, so therefore you need to make sure that they get a fair crack at Currie Cup without exposing them to too much training now. I'm talking about rugby training, and that's why it changes. It's like a moving target all the time, and I'm trying to juggle all those things. I don't want to lose the ability of keeping a group together. I don't want to lose confidence in players that I've promised to give game time to. And I also don't want to lose the fact that we've got to get to a Currie Cup where everyone's had leave, because it's going to bite us if no one's had leave between now and when the Currie Cup starts, because it literally starts, I think, very shortly after the after the URC finishes.
Jake, having next weekend off, is that a help or a hindrance?
Yeah, I mean, I said to you before, Sim, I would have loved to have been involved in the EPCR finals. I mean, that would have been the first prize for us. But every cloud has a silver lining. It does give us an extra week to prepare, and guys that we need to spend time with, or we've got niggles, maybe it'll help me. Not that there are many, but you never know what happens this weekend. So it'll be. I think it'll be for all the teams, it'll be a bonus, because I think you can regroup. But that's also why part of the selection, and it's again part of what I said earlier in that previous question, is that's why if you rotate the squad too much this week and then you pick a team in that, then some players don't play for 3 weeks. And that also comes at a cost, because the cohesion and the rhythm of a team gets broken as well. But it's never right or wrong, because some teams will rest them, and they'll say, therefore, they'll have them fresh for that game. And other teams will say, no, I'm going to keep playing them so that they gun ready, and battled hardened for when they get into those playoffs. Because then it's either in or out. So I think for our group, it's going to be a blessing that we can have off. Also, it'll be Cornell's funeral, I think, which also is, is probably a blessing in that if no one's playing, there'll be the highly likelihood that the boys will be able to attend that funeral.
Jake, just looking at the Dragons, I think John Dobson last week said the Cape Town fans were expecting them to put 60 on them because of where they are on the table.
Yeah.
How dangerous is it to think that because of where they are, and obviously with the background of the emotions this week? Yeah.
I know the one nice thing that we've afforded ourselves is that we don't have to die in this game, if you know what I mean. So it's not a do or die game. Yes, it's a game where we want to play well, and I'd say it with no disrespect, because some guys will say they're bottom of the log and they haven't won, but you know what? It wasn't long ago that people were saying that about Zebra, and they beat some big teams this year as well. So it would be stupid of us and naive of us to think that it's going to be an easy game. We've got to play as well as we can, not for this week, for the next couple of weeks. So if we stick to that, then I'll be happy. That is. But we won't get caught being overconfident or thinking that because they're bottom of the log. Sometimes those are the most dangerous sides to play against, because they've actually had a nice time in Cape Town. They only got up here yesterday. They probably spend a lot of time together, and they'll play with almost this feeling of just giving it 100% because they're on holiday from Monday as well. So sometimes that's also a nice thing because you know you don't have to leave anything in the tank. You can go 100 miles an hour and whatever happens, happens. So it can be, it can be one of those games that if you do think that you're just going to rock up and win, it can come back to bite you.
More generic question, just to take you back to the talk about player transfers. Would rugby not benefit from having a thriving sort of free market, as it were, almost like in the English Premiership, where if you no longer have use for a player, he's got to go. So you talk about bringing back the RGS Neymans and whatever.
Yes.
Theoretically, build the capital to bring them back.
Yes.
Would rugby not benefit from having that instead of the system we kind of have, where we quite sort of reluctant to embrace it,
Embrace what? Just help because I just
to embrace somebody coming to you and saying they're willing to pay X amount for your player.
Okay. It's a very interesting thing. For the very first time this week, Edgar said something to me which I'm not saying I never thought about, but it resonated with me. What's happened is, over time, because all this mass exodus of all these good players has happened, we're actually sitting with another problem, which I never again understood it, but it's hit me this week. Is there a lot of young players that have now the expectation that they need to earn massive amounts of money because they are now playing senior rugby, and they wouldn't have in the real world. And the expectation is that if you don't pay them that money, they then will go overseas. So in effect is the franchises are actually shooting themselves in the foot because we are paying guys that are coming out of junior rugby in the market value far too much in comparison to what they used to get in the old days. And so I go back to what you said is that's why I'm so reluctant to say let's make it an open market, because you'll never be able to build a team. I mean, what will happen is the team that's got, you'll be in the business of selling rugby players it'll be like commodity trading of rugby players out of South Africa. Think about it. So the guy who signs the best juniors and brings them through the quickest is the guy that on the stock market is going to make the most amount of money. It's got nothing to do with how many games you win. It's got nothing to do with how good your team is. It's got to do with how many of those players you can get off the conveyor belt. And so I think the Premiership, as you used your example, the football's different. Football's very different. And I'll tell you why. Because you can arrive on a Thursday and play for your country if you've been at your club the whole week. You can't get to a rugby game on a Thursday night and play for your country on a Saturday. Rugby's just too many things you have to coach and get right, and combinations and all that sort of stuff. And again, they're just different sports. Not saying one is better than the other. Our sport just doesn't work where you get together. I mean, in the old days, I'm old enough to tell you this, when the Springboks used to assemble, they had 72 hours that day. In the old days, you had 72 hours when you could assemble. And that thing's gone now to a week before Test Match 2. You can have 3 days extra out of the window. And the reason for that is because rugby teams take longer to get together and get cohesion before they play Test matches. So it's something that I don't know. Again, I'm going to answer this question by asking you a question. Why is so many people so adverse to the fact that we would like stronger franchises and provincial sides in South Africa? Why is that shooting in the stars? Every team in South Africa wants to have the best players playing the best rugby the longest time together, because that model works, guys. I mean, that model works. South Africa, the national team have shown you. How many, let's turn it around. How many players are the national team allowed to pick in camps? How many? Anyone know?
No.
Okay, is there a cutoff? No. Okay, but there's a cutoff in the squad you can have in URC. Is there a salary cap in the Springboks? Is there, guys? Okay, so why is there one in a franchise? Now, all I'm trying to say to you is if it works at national level, and it does, why is everyone so adverse to the fact that we would like that same model to be in place with the franchises? Why? I don't understand. We want the best players playing the most, with the biggest depth, with the access to rotating the squad, with the most time together so that we can have them over long periods of time. All the things that are making our national team strong. And so that's why that model, to answer your question, that's why in rugby it doesn't work. It's not rugby is very simple. You need players, you need lots of time together, you need cohesion, and all those things work at national level. All the franchises, and I'm talking on behalf of myself, all the franchises, I'm sure, in every province is asking for exactly the same thing. Yes, Positional.
Before we come to
Jake, Nova at 6. I actually forgot that he's still here.
Yeah, well, there's an example, Quibus, of a guy that I said, you will play with the best players in the thing. I don't want to put him in a game where he feels he's just been put in. He had been injured a bit. He hurt, and that again, that's not for me to share with you because guys are injured. I mean, Mpilo's injured, Nazam's injured, Embro's injured. I'm just using names, Gerard's injured, Wilco's not injured, sorry, he's sick. So a guy like Nama, I didn't take him on tour, and I said, you will get your chance, and you will play with a team that gives you confidence as well, that you don't feel like you've been squeezed in for the sake of being squeezed in. And, true to my word, I said, this is the week you can play, and if he plays well, he puts pressure on. Remember, I'm going to lose Marco, who's gone to the national camp. So, that's just, again, making sure that if you commit to a player, or you commit to a process, you've got to make sure that you stick to that, and that's part of that. He gets a chance, and he's trained well now, and he's back from an injury. He had an Achilles injury and an ankle injury, which flared up every time he trained. But this week he's been good.
Nice balance with Cameron and Ruan.
Yeah, and also a nice thing for Nama is very, very good on the ground, as you know. And with Dragons, the way they play, they get a bit of rhythm in their attack, as you saw, and we've got to try and stop their rhythm. And he's now, but also I don't want him, Quibus, to try and do everything in 80 minutes that he tries to do the whole season. I don't want him to try and play 18 rounds in 80 minutes.
Sorry, Coach, I just got two English questions before an Afrikaans question. Can I ask you, Johan Goosen?
Yes.
Is he unfortunate to have so many injuries, though, sir?
Yeah, no, he is. I mean, especially his knees. And I told him he's got, it's unfortunate. But I mean, again, you saw my reaction on Saturday. Why he runs back and tries to win a turnover on the halfway line I can never picture Nas Botha in his day running around and trying to get a turnover. I can't. So I said to him, I don't know what you're trying to do. You're not going to get a high five because you win a turnover on the halfway line, And now he understands. Maybe now the message is clear, So, but he is unfortunate. I mean, he is you get one of those players that, it just happens. He's had knee problems, but one of the most successful stories that I've been part of is Butch James. Butch James, I think, had 9 knee operations and he won a World Cup. So, it's sometimes something you just got to handle, and I'm talking from a coach and a player. But he hasn't helped himself, and I think now that he realizes, when I show him that clip over and over, in fact, when I pick him again, I'll show him that clip before we run out so that he understands that he's not a flanker. Elric actually told him there's a reason flankers don't put their heads into breakdowns.
Yeah, I was just thinking, sorry, before I ask my last English question, at always these critical times of competitions now, at almost knockout stage, international season is starting, and here Johan Goosen once again has an injury. But nevertheless, you've answered the question. My last question.
Nevertheless, is I would like Andre Polo to have been at the Bulls for the last 4 years. Then I wouldn't have to sit here and look at you and think, don't worry, we've got another 10.
Coach, can I ask a very random English question away from rugby? Do you guys, as the rugby side of the business, take inspiration out of your partners, Mamelodi Sundowns, being crowned as champions for the 8th time again?
Of course we do. And we take leadership from that too. They did it. They bought the best players. They don't release players out of contracts. When they don't have a player, they go and find another one. That's incredible, eh? And Patrice just says, if we don't have the guy, go and buy him. That's how they win. 8 titles. It's not a bad way to do it, do you think, Percival? Hey? So maybe we can get inspiration from them as well, and maybe we can copy and paste their model at the Bulls.
Coach, kortliks weer jammer om terug te kom by hierdie vraag net kortliks. Gaan baie emosioneel vir julle wees. En wat is jou herinneringe van Cornell?
Ja, dit gaan baie. Met vir almal, vir die spelers, vir almal. I mean, hy was 'n goeie mens, hy was moersnaaks. Hy was 'n groot deel van die laaste 5 jaar by die Unie. Ek was besig om hom te vra om terug te kom om 'n rol te speel by die Bulle. Jy weet, miskien 'n bestuurrol met die juniors as 'n mentor vir die juniors, of 'n afrigting. So ja, dit gaan 'n helse verlies wees vir ons ook, maar vir sy familie ook. So dit gaan emosioneel wees, en daar's nie 'n manier ek kan vir jou sê dit gaan net 'n gewone dag of wedstryd wees nie, en ek seker die spelers gaan almal dieselfde voel.
maar tog het julle 'n laaste Afrikaans sal julle het nog steeds 'n taak môre om te verrig môre
Ja.
in die trainings.
Ja, ons het en ja, ons wil wen. En dit gaan nie oor net vir Cornell nie. Ons wil wen omdat ons weet daar's 'n groot prentjie en die prentjie is ons wil tuis speel in die semifinals as ons aanhou wen. En die laaste 4 jaar het die span wat bo geëindig in die URC nog nooit een keer die finaal by hulle tuisveld gespeel nie. So wie weet as jy tweede eindig, dit goeie kans as jy geskiedenis kyk dat ons miskien die finaal nog steeds by Loftus kan speel. So ja, daar's baie om vir môre te speel. Dankie.
Thank you.
Thanks guys.